Vermont, June 26th, Route 140, north to Minerva Hinchy Shelter. We parked in the AT parking lot off of Route 140. I did not want to get out of the car as it was pouring out and it was forecasted to rain all day, but it has to be done. It is the week of our vacation, and we need to cover sections of the Appalachian Trail, no matter what the weather is. Thru hikers do it, and we will do it too. There were lots of wildflowers in the parking lot when we started off on the trail, in the rain and with our rain gear on. The rain was coming down pretty steady. It was even getting through our rain gear. My hair was also getting wet as the rain soaked through my hat. To top this off, it was a cold rain and we were getting chilly. The trail was also harder than I had thought it would be. It was the first day of our trip, and I already had known that it was going to rain. So I had picked what I had thought would be an easier section of the trail. Well, it was not an easy section. It was almost a 4-mile hike in both directions, out and back. 3 of the miles had climbed up steeply, no flat areas here. The trail started off immediately with a climb. There were lots of old stone walls beside the trail, so it had looked like this was a pasture at one time. Now it was a hardwoods forest. We reached a pine forest and then into another hardwood forest, this one with some white birch trees. The trail book said that there was an airport beacon in a clearing, but we did not see it. We reached the top, but there were no views here. We descended, and 3 guys passed us. Dave had heard one of them humming before they passed us. We did not know if they were thru hikers or not. We finally arrived at the shelter, wet, cold, and tired. A group of Boy Scouts with 2 leaders from Connecticut were in the shelter when we arrived. They left while we were eating our lunch. Dave discovered that the camcorder was not working and was displaying a wet symbol on the screen. I read the shelter register and found a note about the toilet seat in the privy. Well, I had to check it out. I was surprised to find a poodle painted on the toilet seat cover. It was definitely the most interesting toilet seat that I have ever seen on the AT. The hike out was hard on my knees, which started to ache as I was hiking. I also started to get some back pain. Dave was complaining about his ankle, although the mosquitoes were surprisingly not too bad whenever we stopped today. Remember, it is the last week of June and it's very humid out. As soon as we started to climb in the rain gear, we got very warm. We reached an area called Patch Hollow, a gap at the bottom of a hill. We found a big 7-foot-tall wildflower that I believed was either cow parsnip or water hemlock. We had seen a toad, a frog, a newt, and some chipmunks. We heard some birds. June 27th, Route 4 south to the junction of the Sherburne Pass Trail. We decided to do this section of the trail because we knew that it would be a hard climb, and today was windy with less humidity. The day turned out to be a sunny day and a little warm, but windy. The climb was indeed hard, but it did switch back up a bit, which helped to make the climb a little bit easier. We reached a new lean-to, not on the map, Churchill Scott Shelter, that was built in 2002. It had a new composting privy that was nice. We reached Mendon Lookout and were ahead of schedule, so we were moving pretty good today on the trail. The breeze up here was great at the lookout, and there were lots of white birch and ferns around here, very picturesque. We continued into a nice pine forest and had stayed in the pine the rest of the way on the trail. They were beautiful, and the smell of the pine was very nice. We were so happy when we reached the Sherburne Pass Trail junction at about 4 miles. We took the Sherburne Pass Trail down to the Pico Camp, a very old and small enclosed cabin-like shelter. It was in a great location with great views. We ate our lunch here and then continued down the trail. We had passed some people on this section and some had passed us. We crossed through 2 ski slopes and over some rocky areas and a wet area before we reached the parking lot across from the inn at the Long Trail, about 3.5 miles from the junction. From here, we walked the 0.8 of a mile road walk back to our car. The road walk was horrible, with the heat from the pavement and the sun beating down on us. It was a beautiful day, however, we did not see any wildlife today. We did hear some birds. This area was hit badly by the gypsy moths. Lots of trees had been stripped of their leaves. I did love Pico Camp, the nice breeze, lunch, Dave hugging me in the pines. June 28th, Route 103 north to Lottery Road. It was another pouring rainy day in the morning when we started out on the trail, and it was hard to get moving this morning because of the weather and the hard hiking the past 2 days. We had started this hike from a cow which had two black and white cows and one black cow in it. Then it started to climb steeply with lots of rocks. This section was supposed to be easy. Ha ha ha. Well, it was not easy. It was worse than climbing up Pico yesterday. We did not notice this at the beginning, but it was 869 feet at the parking lot off of Route 103, and it was 1,760 feet at Beacon Hill, which was an 891-foot climb from the parking lot in just 1 mile. We reached a great view of Rutland Airport and then descended and crossed several ATV roads and a dirt road, Old Town Road, which was built during the French and Indian War. We reached the Clarendon Shelter, another enclosed shelter like a cabin. After we left the shelter, we crossed a stream that was flowing very well today and then started up another steep climb up to Beacon Hill. We found an airport beacon here that Dave said was an ILS beacon. There were a lot of wild flowers here, yellow ones, purple ones, and orange ones, lots of color here. This was a very hard climb, but with little rewards, no views. So we descended a little to an open field with unbelievable tall grass. It is in need of some mowing here, especially on the trail for the hikers. The trail was also very muddy and hard to walk on as our boots sunk up over the top of our boots. The grass was so close to the trail and difficult to push out of the way as we were walking on the trail. However, there is a best part of this area. Dave had found some wild strawberries near the trail before the field and also inside the field, and they tasted great, yummy. This is one of the best things while hiking on the trail, eating wild berries. We reached Lottery Road, a dirt road, although it did look like it would be passable by car. We turned back here and had to go back through the tall grass again. Big bummer, of course, because I was paranoid of getting ticks on me. After we passed Beacon Hill, the sun came out, and that started to cheer us up a bit. We had planned to stop at Clarendon Shelter and eat our lunch. However, there was a thru hiker in the shelter that had spread out his gear everywhere inside the shelter. He told us that his trail name was Cedar. He seemed nice, but kept telling us to have a nice day, like he wanted us to leave the shelter. So we moved on down the trail and went back to the lookout to eat our lunch. Another thru hiker passed us on the trail. He had an English accent. He talked with us a little while, saying that he would like to hike the long trail 180 miles north and then get a ride and return back to the Appalachian Trail. He was looking forward to staying the night at the inn at the long trail. He seemed disappointed that the AT was moved and that he would have to do a 0.8-mile road walk to get to the inn. We met another thru hiker as we were climbing down the Rocky Notch. He said that his name was Firefly. This morning, we saw a female thru hiker who was heading south all alone. We have been seeing a lot of thru hikers on the trail in this area. We had covered about 4 miles today, but the rain, rocks, steep climbs, steep descent, and slippery conditions made it feel like we walked a lot longer. June 29th, Upper Cold River Road, south to Lottery Road. Yet another rainy morning, so we decided to do a section with no views. We parked on Upper Cold River Road, which is a dirt road, but it was in decent condition for our car. People live on this road, but unfortunately, Vermont is getting more rich development with big, rich houses, and it is losing the nice old farm look. The trail started off in a nice pine forest. However, there was one hard stream crossing we had to get over. We had gone about 2 miles at a rather good speed and came out onto Cold River Road. Someone here was mowing the field that was at the parking area for the AT. We crossed the road and went into more pine forest before reaching an open, grassy field. At every one of the road crossing, we seemed to come into a grassy field area. The sun had come out and the humidity increased with the temperatures in the 80s. The grassy fields was hot. However, it had a lot of wild flowers, daisies, orange flowers, purple flowers, and more wild strawberries. We crossed Keffer Road, another dirt road, and the trail climbed up a large hill. This area was ravaged by gypsy moths. The problem here is so bad that some of the trees had no leaves. It looked like early spring when the leaves are not out yet. We passed a couple of thru hikers, a young couple and a Girls Scout group. The girls had asked us how far it was to Keffer Road, and we told her that it was about a mile. They seemed to be bummed that they were not there yet. We reached another field, and it was very muddy, with lots of multi-flower rose pickers. Again, we found more wild strawberries. We made it out to where we were yesterday on Lottery Road and sat down on the stile that went over the barbed wire fence to eat our lunch. The fence was broken, and the field no longer had any cows in it. The breeze here was nice as we ate our lunch, and it had turned out to be a nice day. The bugs were not too bad, maybe a couple of mosquitoes and a few gnats. It was nowhere as bad as it was last June when we hiked in Maine. On the way back, we passed an area where a local person had put some sodas in a cold stream for thru hikers, then had a place to leave the empty cans that they would remove from the trail. It was in a really pretty place. We reached the stream crossing, and I took off my boots and socks before I crossed it. As we were almost out, we had heard a thunderstorm in the distance. However, it never came. It was nice to get away from the hustle and hassle of everyday life in modern times. The best things about today was walking in the cold stream in my bare feet, and of course eating all the strawberries that we had found on the trail. I enjoyed the sounds of the woods, hearing the bird and the frogs, and the quietness of the woods. We saw a turtle, a red squirrel, a rabbit, and a chipmunk. I had seen some kind of brown animal in the area that we had seen the man mowing on the way back, maybe a mink. June 30th, the summit of Killington north to the Sherburne Pass Trail. We had stayed in a cabin at Gifford Woods State Park during this trip. The weather today was forecasted to be sunny. It was the first sunny day of this trip, so we decided to go to the summit of Killington Peak. We drove to the gondola and took it up to the summit of Killington. However, as the gondola was going up, we noticed that the summit was getting clouded in with a big cloud mass. When we reached the top, we were in the clouds. We could not see anything up here, not even 5 feet in front of us. We were having trouble even finding the AT up here. Someone had given us some strange direction about a ski trail to the AT. Well, we followed what appeared to be a hiker symbol along a path in the woods and ended up on some kind of nature trail, not the AT. The trail seemed to just circle the top. Then we found a trail that descended steeply on rocks with some blue blazes. Dave said that he thought that this would take us to the AT because he said that blue blaze trails are often found off of the AT. Well, he was correct, and we finally followed the trail onto the AT at a tent platform where we finally saw the white blaze on a tree. We reached Cooper Lodge, and a father and his son was inside, so we continued on down the trail. We did the 2 miles hike to the junction of the Sherburne Pass Trail, where we had been at a couple of days ago. The trail then descended and then leveled off a bit with lots of mountain views, spruce forest, and a moss grounds. I saw some bluebeard lilies and those water parsnips. We stopped and ate our lunch at the junction, just as the sun was coming back out. It was much pretty, with the sun shining through the trees and casting shadows in the woods. We headed back to Cooper Lodge and looked around a bit more. It was in terrible condition in this old wooded cabin. The glass in the windows were gone. It had an old stone floor that had a fire pit that had burnt and blackened the cement ground, vodka bottles, beer cans, and trash was everywhere. I guessed that this was a party area for skiers during the winter. There was a logbook inside, but no pen. It mentioned that Pico Camp was also having some problems. I would never, ever want to stay in this lodge. It was totally trashed. The privy looked new. It was called the Cooper Pooper. We reached a ski slope and saw areas where the skiers had come in near the lodge. There were signs posted everywhere along the slope, warning skiers to stay on the ski slopes and about skiers getting lost and calling for rescue. We climbed back steeply to the summit, about 0.2 of a mile from the lodge, and sat on one of the chairlifts to eat our snack. It was the best day of the trip for weather, and the clouds had lifted around 1 o'clock. The view here was great, and we could smell the pine around us. It was cool all day with temperatures around 60 degrees with a cool breeze. This helped in keeping the bugs away.